Tell your friends. I got an email from somebody who said they made a friend by recommending our podcast.
That's great. I see, this is why the world needs us all, because I guess it's the part of me that does not play games very well or compete or like hold winning and losing very well in my brain. But that also means I don't think about numbers. And so it's good that you do.
It's lovely.
The world needs us all.
I wish I didn't see every measurement as an evaluation of my value.
Welcome to Cult Favorite, the podcast that is a life-transforming event all its own and would never ask you to crack an egg over your head. That's ridiculous. Have you ever cracked an egg over your head?
No.
Some kind of like, I don't know, online challenge?
No. Well,
Did you do the water bucket challenge? You know where the...
No, I was thinking about that recently. Because that was like
viral challenges, are those even a thing anymore?
So that's sort of become that sort of transmuted into like the TikTok trend. I don't know.
What's the TikTok trend?
Like these things people do on TikTok that are trends.
But do they challenge? Like, are there challenges though that people do, or is it just, you mean like just trend setting?
Like everybody do this thing, like the same way as like pour a rice bucket over your head. I don't know. I don't know. We should. I don't know.
Remember planking everybody?
That was such a simpler time.
What was not a simpler time was the late 90s and early aughts, wherein people at Teen Mania events were actually asked to crack a egg over their head. I'm Miranda Simmons. Who are you? You're Mike Altman.
Mike Altman. We are two religious studies professors trying to understand all these cult documentaries. You can't stop binge watching. And if you want to support the show, follow us. I was just informed that our Instagram following count is pretty low. So find us.
Why are you saying that?
Pod.
Oh my God. You were saying, holy crap, we just got 1,000 blah,
we did
blah,
just
blah.
have
so why are you focusing on the negative?
You're right. I'm supposed to be good vibes.
Yes, accentuate the positive.
Anyways, so find us on TikTok.
You can edit that out
later.
Find
us on Instagram. No, I want this to be authentic and genuine.
No, not that part.
And subscribe to the show. Leave us a rating and review.
We're talking about Shiny Happy People season 2.
Yeah, look at us being on
Speaking
point.
Of
this
trend,
just came out.
This was not. This was your suggestion, but I'm gonna do the summary.
Yeah.
I mean, I was very engaged, and so Shiny Happy People was the Duggars documentary that we talked about already. But season 2 is not actually about the Duggars. There's a tiny little bridge that I do want to talk about.
Yeah.
From 2 of the people who were in the Duggars documentary that now introduced us to the second season, which is really about Teen Mania.
Yes.
What did you know about Teen Mania?
I had not heard of Teen Mania before this.
Really?
Because as I was watching the documentary, it was around when I was an evangelical high schooler, but it wasn't as popular as it would be. I was in college by the time it really I was
going to say you were younger than.
Yeah.
So
I wasn't. Did you run into it?
I absolutely remember this. Okay. People were going to Acquire the Fire and stuff for sure.
I knew of Acquire the Fire, but I just put it in the lump of like evangelical revivalism stuff.
Yeah. Well, here's what gets covered. The phenomenon of Teen Mania it's an evangelical youth organization run by Ron Luce for about 30 years. It had a good run from the mid 80s to 2015. Under its auspices were 3 things. And this is really what the documentary lays out. Global expeditions, that's the mission trips for teens. Acquire the Fire, which we just mentioned, which were like massive events for teenagers. It kind of took like tent revival and put them in an arena.
There's nothing new here.
Added fire, Marines, Honor Academy is the third. That is the internship for the people who wanted to take things for the next level. Mm-hmm. In their faith, that's how a lot of the former members talk about it. I wanted to kind of take my faith to the next level. I was getting more involved, but they also they wanted to be interns for Acquire the Fire,
Yeah.
who were like the coolest.
They were.
Here's what does not. So it's about that, but it's also about the fall of that. And like the documentary lays out, what those were, but then the former members talk about the abuses that occurred in each sector. We do not hear from like people who had a nice time, but that's not really what this is doing. And so I didn't like
not what it's doing.
Well, it's just not what the documentary was for.
Yeah.
And at one point, at the very end, actually, one of the former members is saying like, there were lots of people who had a nice time.
Yeah.
This is not for them. We're trying to tell our stories about the abuses that we suffered.
Yeah.
In the name of Christ. But we also don't hear about, which I did expect to hear something about, but I'm always looking for the larger context, is the New Apostolic Reformation, which really, I think, frames on a broader level organizations like Teen Mania theologically, politically. There is a podcast called Charismatic Revival Fury. Ooh. Scholar Matthew Taylor talks about the New Apostolic Reformation. We do not have time here. If you want a rabbit hole, I recommend the production. It sounds like it's supposed to try to be a conversation, but it's really just like his scripted taking you through. So, there's a lot you can learn about it there. Basically, there is a mandate for evangelical, a certain subset of evangelicals that want to blur the boundary between separation of church and state, really take away the separation so that a very specific brand of Christianity can play a larger role in American politics.
Yeah.
So that I think, but that's like, that's the broader context. That's happening for grownups. This is for teens. This is the specific teen version of that ideological phenomenon. So 3 episodes. First one lays out Teen Mania and its 3 branches. We are introduced to a few former members, notably Phil and Liz Boltz, who are the children of Ray Boltz. If you recognize that name, we'll talk about him a little later.
Ray Boltz. Corey
Wright, who I thought was a really important voice, and Mika Ringo, shout out to Tampa, that's where they're from. They are the ones whose stories start to pull at some of the threads of what Teen Mania was ostensibly about. We also meet Ron Luce, who was alienated from his parents. He became a born-again Christian. Like the first scene that we see him in is like he's wearing sunglasses and he's in a motorcycle and he's riding through a drive-thru and asks the clerks like what it means to love God with your whole heart. He's very provocative. He is like, they call him at one point like a Christian culture tastemaker. It's very intense and he kind of mirrors the angry youth vibe that we talked about with Woodstock 99, frankly.
It's all very like evangelical MTV VJ.
Yeah,
aesthetic.
And he calls, though, but MTV is like cancer.
Yes.
So we need to boycott that and create our new.
We've talked about this.
We've talked about this before too. Of like the alternative, the Christian alternative to what you would have in secular society, which in the 90s was characterized to a lot of people's minds by overt sexuality in a way that was not appropriate.
See the Woodstock and the Mr. McMahon and the Jerry Springer episodes we've done already.
Correct. Okay. So he builds Acquire the Fire, describes it as a Christian atomic explosion with teenagers. There were about 60 a year. I did not realize that. That's a lot. And Ron Luce, just creates this kind of Coachella for youth groups is what one person describes it as. In the 90s, too, evangelicals are also becoming a bigger and bigger voting bloc. And that's really important because there is a sense of betrayal that evangelicals have at a time when they registered a bunch of new voters. They elected politicians who ran on conservative values, but then got elected into office and kind of did their thing and became politicians and didn't really advance the cause. So now they've got to take matters into their own hands. And that's really this raise up a new generation, get people prioritizing our theology and, figure out how to make them exemplars in and major players in political society. So we also learn about global expeditions because, these teenagers are told they need to save the world from a literal hell.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes lots of sense. But we get the first little crack in the veneer of you're also supposed to die empty every day, is what they're told. So there are these ascetic elements that are brought to bear. Poor Phil Bolts almost dies. He's in the hospital, but his suffering is for a good cause or whatever. And we meet Jeff Scarlett, who is he's kind of the outsider reporter expert because he was reporting on these groups for Rolling Stone at the time. We don't hear from a lot of we hear the word cult really quickly.
Yeah. Immediately.
Immediately.
Yes.
We do not bring in quote unquote cult experts. And that is a thing that we have seen in several of the documentaries that are about groups that do hold a sort of political social capital.
Yeah. Do you know Jeff Charlotte's work?
No.
Okay.
Not
So
really.
he's written. So he wrote. So he started The Revealer. You know The Revealer?
Oh,
that was his.
No, I don't.
It's an online religion and politics and news site.
I was thinking Believer, which is a McSweeney's joint.
No. He wrote. I think he wrote a book. There's a Netflix documentary on the family. The Washington D.C.
Oh yeah.
He was I think he wrote the book that was based on.
Okay.
He's one of the journalist guys on the religious right beat since I was reading him in college. He's been around forever.
Okay.
So he is the cult expert if we're talking about the religious right as a cult.
Which I would never do because I don't find cult
I wouldn't
analytically
either,
useful.
But
I also wouldn't call Heaven's Gate a cult.
He wouldn't say that either. Well, Heaven's Gate is...
I mean, but that's where I'm at.
I have so many new thoughts on Heaven's Gate after this project.
Okay.
But Jeff is Jeff's sort of the he would never use cult either.
I'm just saying I would never use it to justify anything or because it's always used to legitimate. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think to his credit, he's not using that language. It's all coming from the text.
He does make a very he wants to make a distinction early on though between religion and politics, which I think is very interesting because I think that's that is it makes sense colloquially that we have these kind of we think of these as separate spheres, but the whole point of groups like Teen Mania is if they show us anything, it is how imbricated these categories are and how maybe we should think twice before we relegate them to different spaces conceptually.
Yeah.
Okay. Episode 2, Inter Honor Academy. People pledge lifetime commitments. They are elite warriors in this battle between good and evil because we're taking things back because we don't trust our political leaders anymore. That whole vibe is coming into this more elite space. Dave Haas is the executive director and Ron Luce is number 1. And he's super military oriented. So, and somebody says, and I think that it's worth noting that it makes sense that everything is mega regimented and super militaristic if your mission is to run a youth organization that is trying to change the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I think putting these things in context is important. They, create placements for interns. There are about 1,000 at any given time. It's a big operation. Call centers are recruiting people for the global expeditions. These interns are not paid. It's important to say, but they paid a monthly fee to work. 31 hours is the official amount of time you're supposed to work, but many kids are doing triple that because they want to demonstrate their commitment and die to themselves was the language. So it's all about obedience. We hear about that, like it's kind of not an overt callback to, but certainly the ethos is the same as what we hear about in Shiny Happy People season 1. Ron is teaching these character development classes that are based on obedience. Purity culture is a big thing. Josh Harris, who is the author of I Kissed Dating Goodbye, who later, recanted his stance and apologized for all of the influence it has had, is interviewed for the documentary as well. So he talks about that a little bit. And maybe this was Jeff Scarlett who said that this regime of self-policing and all of this control is not so much about people following the rules, so much as it is always thinking about the rules, which I thought was an interesting distinction that makes a lot of sense.
Pause.
Yeah.
I'll edit this. It's Charlotte.
Charlotte. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. It's Lawlish and Charlotte. We'll get our pronunciations one day.
Just why. All right. Now I can start back. I can find that easily now.
Charlotte. So there are also something called LTEs, life transforming events. This is where people are learning experientially. There are lots of examples of this.
Yeah.
One of them is that we're splitting campus in half. Half are missionaries, half are quote unquote tribal people, and the former has to figure out how to convert the latter.
Yeah.
One example is staff waking you up at 3 a.m. You are blindfolded and taken out to the middle of nowhere, given a 6-foot cross, and you have to just find your way back, but you can't ask any questions. Like this kind of stuff is happening. Corey, one of the very few people of color on campus, tells his own stories about what that was like and how, a lot of the drama that they would put on, they would perform lots of things. Again, this idea of like native otherness that was also racialized was a big part of the just kind of way of seeing the world.
Yes.
We learn about the origin story of Ray Boltz's I Pledge Allegiance to the Lamb. We can again come back to him. But importantly, news breaks about the Columbine massacre in 1999 as they are about to stage this day one stadium event in Detroit. I think it's Detroit. Victim at Columbine, Rachel Scott, was signed up with Teen Mania to go on a global missions trip that summer. Jeff Charlotte says, Ron uses Rachel at day one. Instead of like, this could be you, so we've got to stop violence, it's this could be you, wouldn't that be awesome? Because she's a person who knows how to give her life to Christ in a literal way.
There's another girl, whose name comes up, who escapes me, who also died in Columbine. And I was watching this with my partner, and she knew as soon as they said Columbine, and like in the context, she said her name because it was so embedded in her brain from the news. It was not embedded in my brain, clearly. But I just had not realized how much that story, which turned out to be not true.
Okay. I was wondering if you were gonna. Okay.
Yeah,
yes.
But how much that got like mainstream play, because my partner did not grow up in my little world. So I just thought that was
Cassie Bernal.
She immediately said she was Cassie Bernal, and I was like, "What?" And then it came up on the screen
of like the gunman. Are you a Christian? Yes, I am. And so then they shoot her.
Yeah.
So the character of a martyr starts to take center stage.
Yeah.
And is utilized and operationalized in a really effective way at this event, but then also at the Honor Academy, because after Columbine, the intensity really amps up. They have these ESOLs, emotional stretching opportunity of a lifetime. these simulated Navy SEAL Hell Week, and their stories abound. But, like if you think that you are in a battle between good and evil, and this is a real war that you're fighting, then this takes on a different kind of intensity than just a sort of like military simulation LARP drama event. Like, this is something else, and they really, this is where a lot of the stories of abuse are coming out. Teen Mania becomes part of the Arlington group. This is a secretive group involving the nation's most influential evangelical Christian leaders. Two of the big players at the beginning were James Dobson and Charles Colson. You know who Chuck Colson was?
Yeah, I had to read Chuck Colson's book when I was in middle school.
Really?
Yeah.
The one that he wrote in prison?
He wrote in prison, yeah.
He was Nixon's hatchet man, like was involved in the Watergate scandal, went to prison for it, but then became a born-again Christian, and then became a leader that tried to, go to war with secularity after Anyway, so but Ron Luce and Teen Mania get a seat at that table, and Ron and Chuck Colson come up with an idea called Rewired, which is like a teen worldview curriculum. So they want to take Honor Academy global. Episode 3. So we've got general layout, global expeditions. Here's Honor Academy and what it's up to. Episode 3, it brings it uses same-sex marriage and that debate as a sort of entry point into the kinds of thinking and ideological through lines that are running in Teen Mania. So same-sex marriage is in the conversation in the early aughts. The Arlington group is trying to organize. Ron Luce is a new member of this. Dobson calls same-sex marriage, by the way, the most dangerous national policy being considered, which, if you think about what else was happening in the early aughts, is a really bold claim to make. But they're trying to cultivate youth voters, and get them on their side before they join popular opinion on that issue, which was majority like, this is fine. So Ron creates Battle Cry. This is designed to be a bigger version of Acquire the Fire, huge stadium events, had actual military SEALs, like giant guns on stage.
Comes in a Hummer.
Man, the campaign is called Battle Cry for a Generation. He's leading kids in political protests, and people start leaving. Like, this is when there is a tipping and breaking point for Micah Ringo. They leave and start a blog because everyone's trying really hard to kind of keep up with all this intensity, but people are also people, and so Micah leaves. They start a blog called Recovering Alumni, My Teen Mania Experience, and start collecting a lot of stories that people have about what these, ESOL.
It's always a blog or a Facebook group. It's always something that takes things down, right? Like, it's like,
it's people sharing their stories. And so, like, how you are able to access those stories and how you are able to transmit those stories, it makes sense. But, like, there were a lot of there was a lot of physical injury, a lot of emotional trauma that they wanted to bring to the leadership. Tried to deal with it, as they suggest they should, like in privacy, and they don't listen, and they say, you're just trying to take us down. And so they go to the press, and once news breaks, Teen Mania suspends that program but goes into full damage control. We hear from their former communications director. They go into financial trouble. They finally shut down in 2015. Jeff Charlotte says that, like, there's a kind of psychoanalytic take on all of this where Ron is always looking for a father figure, and he's kind of dragging teens into that angry moment that he just couldn't get past. But with the anger, there's also a lot of hate. So we get the whole documentary ends with sort of like glimpses of the afterlife of Teen Mania. So it closes in 2015, but in 2024, just last year, we get a clip from a conservative political action conference. We hear about where someone is talking about like democracy has failed us. We need to overthrow. Like democracy is dead. We need to overthrow things. Like in very overt language. And we hear about the Convention of States, which is an effort to change the Constitution and get rid of the separation of church and state in the First Amendment. And it has been backed by several evangelical leaders like James Dobson, but also, House Speaker Mike Johnson. And it's in the name of states' rights, which also has its own long and tortured history. So then, people talk about their own roles and complicity. The communications director has complicated feelings about the work that she did to try to do damage control for Teen Mania. I Kiss Dating Goodbye author is like, maybe that did a lot of damage.
Yeah.
But the former members are giving their own kind of thinking about their own roles. And, one of them says like he's angrier now that he's grown because he understands exactly how vulnerable youth are. Corey says he's trying to live and wants to be the person his 18-year-old self would be proud of. That was very sweet.
Yeah, Cindy, the comms director, who has a moment where she finally realizes how broken the whole thing is. She has a part where she talks about she locates herself within these systems that cause harm and abuse, which was the kind of interesting moment of someone being like, oh, I was a cog in this larger thing, which we don't often get in these. I think it was Micah, someone who said that basically we were all complicit and we were all victims, which I thought was a really another like that. It was short, but that was one of the more precise conclusions.
Yes,
any of these sort of documentaries we've seen,
and it's from that perspective, it makes sense that we would get perhaps a more sophisticated rendering than what we do from people who are trying to explain it rather than just talk about the meaning making exercise that is overlaid to these kinds of case studies tend to try to create the megalomaniac cult leader who is like this, and the hapless manipulated sheep who fall into typically his spell, anyway.
Yeah. I mean, we don't get the sense, that Ron Luce is some charismatic leader who,
do you not think? I mean, he could.
He's a showman. Like, they could have done that.
Exactly.
But that's not how he's presented.
It's not, see, that's what, it's one of the things that I find so interesting, because it would be so easy. It would be so easy to take the kind of explanatory playbook script about Marshall Applewhite or, Jim Jones or and put it onto Ron Luce and talk about how he was able to, because we do hear little glimpses from people about like how he seemed like a celebrity and this and that. And so it could very easily be presented that way.
Yeah.
But there is a production choice that does not present it that way, even as it talks about the harms that it has done, the abuses that people experienced, and even as, again, we've talked about this before, you and I, but like the former members use the word cult really quickly and easily. And that's their prerogative, because whatever language you want or need to talk about your experience belongs to you. but the kind of explanatory rubric that we use to place these stories, I think is just always so interesting and worth paying attention to.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think too, like, the part of it is that these kids were not recruited off the street. They were coming because of a youth. They were all already members of churches,
right?
And they're being sent by youth pastors and parents and things. And so there's a way that, like, this is like so many other kind of parachurch organizations that just sort of glom on, which I think is why, like, the New Apostolic Reformation stuff is not in there, because they were not limiting themselves to churches in that movement. They were pulling people from Southern Baptists and conservative Presbyterians and conservative Methodists and all sorts of, So I think there's like that interesting piece to it where like that there's like the kids are off doing this stuff and the parents and maybe even some of the youth pastors have like no idea.
And early on, it's Ron Luce himself who is traveling around to all of these youth groups all over the nation to try to recruit people. So, I mean, there is this singular figure doing a thing, being a tastemaker, having a influence. And then, there is, when they come to the Honor Academy, they talk about how it's like, your parents aren't going to understand this. Your families might not understand this, but your responsibility and obligation is to God.
Yeah.
And so there is this unquestioning submission to authority, a divine authority, even potentially at the expense of their families.
And there's something about like the way parenting and adolescence was from like 1998 to 2008 that I think makes space for this to have like this is also a product. It's a product of like a particular theological movement, political movement, but also a particular set of like social norms around young people at the time that we've talked about, whether it's Woodstock 99 or whatever. Like it's all kind of that's all sort of baked into this in kind of an interesting way.
100%. What were the things that stood out to you?
I want to talk about Ray Boltz.
Let's do it.
Did you know who Ray Boltz was before this?
Absolutely.
Okay. First of all, I was shocked at how many Ray Boltz songs I know. And I was trying to describe Ray Boltz to somebody, and I was like Lee. Like,
do you want to give us a little?
No, I will. I will.
I bet your numbers would go up since you care so much about the numbers.
My mom sang a number of those songs in church. I have like very clear memories of hearing "Thank you for giving to the Lord" in church.
Thank you for giving to the
Lord, special
man.
music. And but I didn't know his story. Like he was just he was just alongside all of the other Christian musicians I knew. I did not know he came out. I did not know his kids. No, I knew none of that. I was like, I want more.
Right.
So like,
Ray Boltz is fascinating.
There needs to be a Ray Boltz documentary, because like, maybe
you could do an intellectual biography on Ray Boltz.
Yeah, I had a very So, a friend has told me I should do more autoethnography. Maybe my first project would be Ray Boltz. But the kids who are his kids who are grown on the show, Phil
and
Liz, they're amazing. Liz, go follow Liz on TikTok. She's hilarious. They're great together.
Okay.
That's the other thing I've noticed a lot is a lot of the posts once the show is now and out. A lot of these people they're on TikTok expanding on what they say in the show. So that was the first thing. The second thing, did you know Braveheart was so central to American evangelical culture?
No, but I knew that Braveheart was central to American culture.
Okay. But it's like, it has a very, like, this. So in the documentary, they talk about Braveheart. And it was shocking. One of those things where, like, I think I didn't realize, like, the Mel Gibson movie is one of the things that is sort of runs throughout this era of American evangelicalism.
Came out in 1995.
Yes.
I just
and like
searched,
it was like
so it makes sense.
Our youth group watched it.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
And because of the story, especially because I like one of the reasons I didn't run into Acquire the Fire, not besides of like sort of the timing, was I was off more in the Reformed Conservative Presbyterian youth group circles, which was the kind of like they had the old white men in the church had theological problems with the New Apostolic people.
Okay.
Because they were like, they didn't like the whole charismatic movement. They were kind of side-eyeing it.
Okay.
So we didn't get that, but we got Braveheart because, of course, like those conservative Presbyterians love Scotland. And so that was huge. Like, so there's so I keep thinking that someone needs to really do a deep dive on Braveheart and American Christianity, because it's so much there. The closest thing is in the Uncivil Religion Project, uncivilreligion.org. We'll put the link in the show notes, but there's an article from Kristen Dumais. So that website is about various images from the January 6th attack on the Capitol, one of which is a poster of Braveheart. It's a sign someone had, and it is Braveheart with the severed head of Karl Marx.
Interesting.
And Kristen writes an incredible essay, very accessible, very short, about that. Like, what is, like, explaining to somebody like who's curious, like, what's up with this image? And she goes through and talks about, Mark Driscoll, who was the misogynistic and hateful pastor of Mars Hill in Seattle. There's a Christianity Today podcast about that whole thing. So he posted his horrible things under the pseudonym William Wallace II. Probably a book that I don't think has gotten enough coverage by scholars. I mean, Kristen's talked about it in her book, Wild at Heart, Discovering the Secret of a Man's Soul by John Eldredge, which came out in 2001. And as late as like
you should read it though.
Well, I was gonna say, as I was exiting evangelical land, that book was still being passed out and recommended, and he points to William Wallace over as a model of proper masculinity. Like, there's such an obsession, with this movie, and and Kristen talks about all the different churches that would make exceptions, or the Christian groups that would endorse it even though it was rated R. So you have this like movie made by a conservative Catholic that conservative Protestants just eat up when it comes out.
And it's also, I think, such a like, that movie is it creates a story of it's a nationalistic message, even as it is also this personal journey, and like it weaves together all of those strands that we've been talking about, where like it's not just, religion over here and culture over here and politics over here and history over there. Like, a story about national freedom or the independence of a country is also the story about a domination and vanquishing of good versus, over evil.
And it's an authoritarian leader. So it balances a kind of authoritarian politics with a rhetoric of freedom. And I think that is what's sort of at the heart of this. Like, I think it's at the heart of a lot of modern things we might call evangelicalism. And this example in the documentary is another piece of that, where like there are incredibly authoritarian megachurches, some in this state, whose main curriculum they want their members to go through is called freedom. So the whole thing is this very kind of authoritarian, all the same kind of stuff here, purity culture. So stuff that from the outside, I think an observer is like, this is a lot of rules. This is a lot of like giving up. This is a lot of guilt and, trying hard and whatever. But then the rhetoric is of freedom, both in like on a personal level, but then this large. So like from the outside, it can seem, and I think there's a lot of gotcha commentary about evangelicalism on the internet. That's like, oh, well, they don't like, how does it freedom and democracy, and they're so patriotic, but also they're authoritarian. It's like, and it's like, no, there is a way that they balance those and bring those together.
One of the things that I appreciate about, I haven't listened to the whole thing, but that Charismatic Revival Fury podcast that I mentioned on the New Apostolic Reformation is a kind of, a history of how those messages and images and ideas came to make sense. Because I guess if you're looking at, any number of these moments or of these examples in a vacuum and externally, if you're looking externally at one of these moments, it can seem incongruous or those connections can seem hard to make. And but there is a very careful and curated trajectory. There is a long, there has been a long game always in mind. There is plan. There is, even though not centralized, organized, church like leadership.
Yeah.
There is so there's a kind of diffuse network of apostles and prophets and whatever, but their messaging is very unified, and the ways that different things come to make sense for them is something that I think is worth paying attention to if you want to have a more sophisticated rendering of any of this beyond, again, just like surface reading.
The last thing about the documentary itself that jumped out to me was just like another example of just like anger.
Sure.
Like the anger of this moment is something that we keep coming back to through the different, whether we're talking about the Jesus Camp or Woodstock 99 or now here, like there was an anger amongst the youths that I think is interesting to see the various ways it gets sort of, instead of the anger of Limp Bizkit, it's like the anger of Acquire the Fire,
and there's a sense in which it's a like literally righteous indignation.
Yeah.
Such that you have to be angry if you're taking something serious. And if you're not angry, well, then you're just not paying attention.
And it goes back to like the quote from Jewel in the Woodstock 99 doc about we didn't feel like we had anything we were fighting for. These kids do.
Absolutely.
Right? Like they have been given something that feels life or death, that feels so important, and that says, and you have a very important role to play.
Which is why they can have a similar energy, even though a contradictory message to the people on the Woodstock stage.
Yeah. What did you want to talk about?
Well, I'll just say very quickly, I was trying to race through that summary, I know, but I mentioned that at the very beginning, the bridge from season 1 to season 2 is Amy and Dylan. Amy, I forget their last name, but Amy was the fun cousin.
The fun cousin. May we all be the fun cousin.
The cousin of the Duggars who, also grew up conservative and religious, whatever, but was allowed to like watch TV and go to prom and stuff. And she didn't want a quiver full of children for her own life. And so she kind of showed up on the show as the lovable insider who is also she's in but not of, the Duggar family. And so those two are sitting on a couch. That's the first thing that we see. And they're like, I knew this would happen. We're coming back, But then we don't see them again for the entire documentary. They're just kind of there as like the sort of like the when Alfred Hitchcock comes to like announce a thing that that's a bad metaphor, but like it's like we get like an image of them before the actual thing itself.
It's a good
to explain the
technique.
thing.
Yeah, it's a good way to connect it to the previous season.
So here's what was interesting though. So Dylan says, how do you know? And this segment also is like a couple of minutes. Like it is not long.
Yeah.
But this is the gist of their conversation. Dylan says, how do you know if you're in a cult if that's your normal? Amy's like, you don't. Dylan says, until someone comes along and says, that's not good. That's a cult. And again, while there is an entire conversation, much of which we've had in different, forms over the months, but like there is a whole conversation about like who gets to call something a cult, when and why, where and how, And when does that align with or not align with the production choices to render something a cult?
Yeah.
But to have a little academic moment, I thought that, it's a perfect example of Louis Althusser's interpolation, this idea that we come into a sense, we are individuals in society, but we come to be subjects of a society by way of society, hailing us, interpolating us. So an individual becomes a cult member, quote unquote, only always after the fact. They are interpolated into cult member. You're never, and we, people talk about this when they say no one ever joins a cult. You join a
this is
group
in the
of
vow.
People that we love.
You try to do a good thing, and then
100%.
Yeah.
So society, though, has this category, as we've talked about a little bit, the origins of how cult came to mean something pejorative and othering. This, and it has used it to mean these things, these ways of othering people in society, and then it hails individuals into that subjectivity. So I think it was, the nutshell is societal structures always play a role in our individual senses of self.
Oh yeah,
that's the
yeah.
That's the very quick nutshell of what interpolation means. But
it goes back to, what was it? I can't remember which documentary it was where I said I think it was when we talked about Hillsong, the language of evangelicalism from the stage or the pulpit is always second person.
Mm-hmm.
It's you are. So it's not just the interpolation in terms of you're a cult, you're in a cult. Or it's that it is there's a rhetoric that is constantly telling you who you are.
It's like you're teeing me up, Michael. The segue is ideal because that is exactly so. So this is also the means by which people are given it gives language to how people get wrapped up in Teen Mania in the first place, because several of the former members, Phil Boltz included, talk about and I think he most directly talks about the what it's like to leave, and how when you leave, you lose a sense of self in a really specific and direct way, and we hear that from a lot of the people that are interviewed. And so I think that those really complex dynamics of individual choice, individual sense of self, societal structuring, religious or any kind of societal organization, how those all interconnect and how they shape each other, how they constitute each other in mutual and important ways. Interpolation is one of those academic terms that helps give language to that, and it's an important one. So follow that rabbit hole too, everybody.
Well, and this is a really good segue to my takeaway, actually.
Great.
So near the end in the third episode, there was a moment, and I drew a picture in my notes. I don't remember exactly what was said, but to your point, they were talking about, I think it was at Phil Bolt's part, about you get your belonging in community and you get your identity, and this is why it's hard to leave. And it was interesting, I never was involved in Teen Mania, but there was one person who says, so you're involved and then you start to feel like it's not working, and there's this cycle of guilt, and then so you kind of step to the side, but you don't want to completely leave.
Because they don't know how to live in society, they said. It was like a prison reference. I don't know how to live on the outside. And so I go back, kind of thing.
I know that there were 5-10 years of my life when I was still going to an evangelical church, but I was like, but I don't believe all of that. But it's good for my kids.
Sure.
Because I never knew another way to like make friends, to like find stuff to do. It like organized so many things.
Sure.
That it wasn't, I didn't know how to live in society, but at the same time, so you try to like, you go to the edge, like, well, I'll be like the one person, and then eventually you realize like no one wants to hear what I have to say, and this is causing more friction. And you eventually, you know,
because like why should they, right? Like in these like where group formation is most successful is where people are able to share things that everybody already agrees with. This is why. So it's
you rationalize like I'll like the progressive professor in this conservative church and it'll be fine and maybe I can change the people, and then you're like, oh wait, no, I got to get the hell out of here.
Which is not to say I want to be very like clear about it's not to say that multiple identity spaces don't belong to a singular human subject at one time. Of course they do. And we are always inhabiting multiple spaces. So it's not, I don't want to, I think people can also be really quick to create dichotomies where like, this is the space that thinks and feels this way, and this is the space that thinks and feels this way. But academia is like this. Church is like this.
To go back to your interpolation point, though, I think what happens is the interpolation stops working.
Yeah.
Or you start to feel it in a way that because no one's walking around like, oh, I'm being interpolated, right?
Of course.
But you start to recognize that, like, no, I'm not, like,
right.
You are. No, actually, that's not right. And so that I think is what, and so what this got me thinking about is like, I think I've come up with a new term.
Ooh.
We'll test it out.
Okay.
Evangelical culture, which is...
yes. Keep going. It's just like a... Keep going.
It's awkward, I know.
I'm here for it.
But it is this media aimed at evangelical or progressive Protestant audiences.
Yep.
And it uses nostalgia. So I'm like, yay, like, they show that clip of Carmen. I'm like singing all the Carmen songs, right?
Yes.
Like, and these shared cultural reference, that may have been traumatic and damaging at the time, but we've all put enough space. Like a lot of us have put enough space behind it.
Yeah.
And so, like, there is. I think we're beginning to see now that this is season 2, a whole new topic, a much more obscure topic than the Duggars for the average viewer who doesn't come from this world. And so like, I do think that there's like, so I tell the story about my own sort of my cycle out mirroring the cycle these people took out, saying, I think there's a lot of people who were not as far in or in these as I think harmful or traumatic or abusive programs, spaces, institutions, what have you, who identify with the larger arc of the story. And that's where I think this evangelical thing.
Right.
And the flip side of that is with this story is like, when I was in that world, I felt like we are never going to win.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
Okay.
And
there's an interesting, like that win-loss rhetoric is really important in that same kind of framing where battle military culture also is present.
Well,
that makes sense.
Not to extend that metaphor, but having come out of it, I wonder if, like, I'm starting to wonder if now, not that I'm on the other side, but theoretically on the other side, and maybe I have yet to shed my binary evangelical thinking. It feels like, wait, now this side's losing. I feel like I got screwed. I feel like I could have, if I've been I could have been part of the cultural elite of the 90s and not in evangelical land. Right. And been enjoying the way Hollywood was feeding me all, I was on board with everything. But then now, in our current social and political environment, I'm like, wait, like all of the cultural, it for a while, it felt like, oh, the progressives have won the culture war, like same-sex marriage, the example from the documentary. Sure. But then post the fall of Roe, which was the goal of these people from the 80s.
Right.
It's like, shit. I think we're on the other, like, So I've gone from like there's the great Christian Smith title, Evangelical is Embattled and Thriving. Now it feels embattled on the other side, right? And maybe that's just because of where I live and what I read. But
social capital is always a currency in flux, is I think what that's to say for sure.
Yeah.
Like, and I think what becomes, and so maybe this is my makeshift takeaway, is that the language that we put around those shifts, to make sense of them, is like where I think our attention should be directed, rather than who has more or less. It's like, how did this come to be over here? Like it's
I think that's where this documentary is helpful, because I think it might, like, if the religious right may have actually won the culture war in some ways, because I think about if the story was in 1999, Hollywood is dominated by all these progressive ideas and et cetera, et cetera. If you look at the mediascape now, we have, and part of it is what's happened to media fragmentation, blah blah blah. But like, we had Rush Limbaugh, we didn't have Joe Rogan.
Maybe it's just because I'm a middle child and I don't like competition. It's a defense mechanism, I'm sure. I just find the language of winning and losing really final. So like, I don't know that like these are the people in power it sounds much more accurate to me, I guess, than this is what has won. Like, there is change is going to be inevitable always, and it keeps, I think that it would keep us, if we were more attuned and aware of those inevitable shifts, we would also, I think, take more seriously moments where we think, oh, that can't possibly happen.
Yes.
This is codified into federal law. Yes. Obviously, that's forever.
Yes.
Like, no, it's not forever, because these are things that social capital is a shifting currency.
That's exactly right. And I think that I can't remember who said this, but the idea was that this was back in the 90s, early 2000s, that like conservatives took culture more seriously because they had to, hence all of the alternatives, etc. Right?
Well, and because you are literally at war with the powers of divine forces and the culture war,
and
is very literally being played out.
I'm wondering if what I think this documentary helps me think about is the ways that emphasis on the culture, has, like, that the fact that 3 million teenagers of my generational cohort went through this explains why now there has been a return of so much regressive, misogynistic, patriarchal media, right? And there are other explanations having to do with the changes in the media landscape, but I think in some ways, not that they won the culture war, but there have been spaces where the culture war of the 90s and 2000s is now coming to fruition.
Sure.
And I don't know that a lot of progressive thinkers were paying attention to that, because they had a dominant over the media since the 40s.
Well, and in our space as scholars, in our space and role as scholars, I think that it's important to help give some language that speaks to those complexities, like evangeliculture. It
rolls right off the tongue. Next time you see one of those,
it helps.
Yeah.
Well, what?
I was like, next time you see one of those TikToks referencing a random 90s evangelical song, just be like, evangeliculture.
I think that those complexities are what we try to think about and talk about with nuance.
Yeah.
And And so sometimes we, create language to do that. And it's important. What's your cult favorite? Or do you want me to go first?
I'll go first. Fine.
Go.
Mine is our fiddle leaf fig opal.
You named
it. Given to us by our dear friend Emily Cruz, who's now in Chicago. When she was leaving to go to Chicago, couldn't take it with her. It started. It was touching the ceiling in our house, which is like in our living room, which is like 12 feet tall. And so it was time to prune it, which scared all of us deeply. And she seems to have gone through it successfully. And we now have 3 little opal triplets that I'm trying to root. So we'll see.
If one of that, can I be an auntie?
Sure.
Can I be like a godparent to one of the triplets? And take care of it?
We'll see.
And eat its figs?
I gotta see if I can do this without screwing it up. But I'm
so envious of thriving fig trees. I want one so bad, and I've just never.
We got lucky. It's in the right spot. It loves the window it's in, and it's gotten. I mean, it's.
I've never tried. I guess because I want it so bad, I haven't tried.
We've killed one. We killed one at our old house, but this opal is doing amazing, and so that's my cult favorite. Just because I care for it.
In these complicated times, when things are difficult, and when we need to, this is my cult favorite. This is oats. This is an alpaca that is made of alpaca fur, and I don't really go in for like stuffed animals and stuff. That was never actually a thing for me, even as a kid. But this is not a stuffed animal. It's got like a little hard core, but then it's just alpaca fluff. And man,
it's not a stuffed animal. It's a fluff animal.
It's a fluff animal. And this, can you see it? Everybody?
This is why you should go to the YouTube.
I'm allergic to a lot of things. And so, frankly, to have like a soft creature in my life that doesn't make me sneeze is really a revelation.
Great.
I was inspired by a dear friend who had something similar, and he handed it to me. Like, I saw it on his bookcase, and he handed it to me, and I was just like overwhelmed. I was just like sitting there and petting it for
amazing
a very long time. So now I have one in my life, and I think its name is Oats. It's still new.
That's a good name. Mm-hmm. Would you call your that encounter with the alpaca a life transforming event?
Oh, definitely. Emotionally,
were you emotionally stretched?
Yeah, 100%. See, I can't stop petting it.
Well, we hope this podcast has been an emotionally stretching. Was it about something
Thanks
experience of a lifetime? Yeah. You can subscribe, leave us a rating and review. I don't know. Tell your friends. I got an email from somebody who said they made a friend by recommending our podcast.
That's great. I see, this is why the world needs us all, because I guess it's the part of me that does not play games very well or compete or like hold winning and losing very well in my brain. But that also means I don't think about numbers. And so it's good that you do.
It's lovely.
The world needs us all.
I wish I didn't see every measurement as an evaluation of my value.
Yes. No. Oats can help you with that. Anyway, say the things. I got to leave.
Thanks to the Department of Religious Studies, the University of Alabama. And we'll be back in 2 weeks. I don't know what we're going to talk about
Talking about something.
We'll figure it out. Bye.